Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Creating Custom Reports. Thanks for joining me this morning. My name is Brianna Garrett. I am the training coordinator. And this course is going to cover how you can create your own reports within Paragon. If you have questions along the way, I always encourage those. So you can type those into the questions box, which you have in that panel on the right side of your screen. I get those in real time, so we can stop and get those questions answered, and we can also address additional questions at the end. This webinar is credited for New Hampshire agents, so at this time, the webinars that we offer are only credited for New Hampshire licensees. But the way it works is you can, as long as you're here for the full session, you will receive access to the quiz. Again, everyone's going to get the access because I don't pick and choose and try to figure out who's licensed in New Hampshire or not. So if you are licensed, you can go ahead and take that quiz. If you get at least an 80%, you are emailed an affidavit. You have to complete that quiz by Wednesday, May 2nd at 5 o'clock. And it does take me some time to review the scores and email those affidavits. So just keep in mind, you might not get it immediately. You probably won't get it immediately. It'll take a day or two for you to receive that affidavit via email. All right, let's get into it here. Paragon allows users to create their own reports in two different ways. The first is you can copy an MLS report, meaning take one that's already available in the system, copy it over, and then make as many customizations as you want. Or you can build your own from scratch, which is more like starting from a blank slate, a blank page, and you're just adding the fields, setting it up into exactly how you want it to look. A few benefits to creating your own reports. It allows you to design a view exactly how you want it to look. Office admins and brokers can also create an office report, which is then made available to everyone in the office to use. And you can create reports that you can then customize by adding text boxes and fields to be changed. So what I mean by that is right now in Paragon, you might have already known this, that there are several different reports, like the flyers, for example, that you can customize the font and the text, and you can add and remove fields from it. So when you create your own custom reports, you can have that ability as well. Once it's saved and you're viewing it in the system, you'll have the ability to customize it on the fly if you wish. And we're going to go over all of that. So with that, I'm going to go into Paragon. And first thing I want to show is where you actually go to add or edit your own reports. And that is under the Preferences menu. And right in the middle here, you have a section for custom views and agent views. Now, if you're just an agent, you're only going to see the ability to add agent views. If you happen to be the broker or the office admin, you'll also see the ability to create office views, and that's how you would create a view so that everyone else in the office could make use of it. We're first going to go over agent views. So to do that, I'm going to click on My Views. And that brings me to a list. Now, the first time that you come into this, it might actually be a blank page because you haven't created any views yet. So that's what this list is. It's just a list of the views that you have created. You have your command bar here. You have Add, Delete, and Copy View. Going to add would be if you wanted to start from scratch. You wanted that blank page to just truly create your own report entirely. Copy view is the way that we're going to go about it. And that's my general recommendation, is that you start from something that's already created. It's kind of like, when you were in school and the teacher provided you a writing prompt, it made it a little easier to figure out what you were going to do for that paper. So that's what I like to do here, is copy view. We're going to just copy one that's already available in the MLS and then make as many different changes as we want. Clicking on copy view, It changes my view a little bit here where I have custom views. And right now it's set to my views. Opening that drop down, I can choose to copy an office view, which would be if admins or brokers in my office had created a bunch of views, I could copy that and make my own changes to it. Or I can choose MLS, which is what I've chosen here. And that provides me with a list of all the reports currently available. So you can copy any report and make it your own. The one I'm going to choose is the blue flyer. So it says blue flyer right here, and on the far right, copy. Clicking copy brings me into settings. Now, before I go into that, I want to show you exactly what it is that I'm copying. Before I started the session, I ran a search, and this is the blue flyer. So this is what we're copying. This is how it looks currently in the system. So at the top, you can currently edit your own text here. You can add more text at the bottom, and there's a few other edit options that you have when you click on customize fields here. A popular question I get when I show this report in my classes is, I really like that. How can I customize that so that it always just says open house here at the top? And the answer is you can do that. It's just not from here. It's by creating your own view. So that's how we're going to go about this. I want to be able to create my own flyer so that whenever I use it, I don't have to worry about editing this text up here at the top. It's just going to say open house for me. Back in my views, we're in settings. And first is activate this view, which is not currently checked. Once you check this, it's going to be available in your list of reports for you to use. So this is sort of like your very final step. As you're editing and making changes to it, it's not going to be available, and that's probably best practice so that you don't actually use a report that's not finished. Email this view is checked by default, and you can leave that as is. That's going to provide you with the ability to be able to email that report once it's activated and available for you to use. Custom name. So it automatically puts in the name that's currently provided. I recommend changing this a little bit at least so that you know that your blue flyer is different from, the blue flyer that is currently in the system. So maybe it's as simple as just putting blue flyer 2 so you know it's yours. But in my case, this is not just a blue flyer, it's an open house flyer. So that's what I'm going to change the name to. Also, take a look at your margins. I do recommend that you have 0.25 for all 4 margin options, and that's just going to provide you with the maximum amount of space on the page. So this one is set to 0.5, so I'm going to switch 0.25. And with those changes, I'll just hit save at the top. It gives me this little reminder pop-up that the view is not currently active, so it's not going to be available in my list of reports. That's fine. I'll just go ahead and click OK. When you click OK, it brings you back to your list of views. And so right here, I have my open house flyer. I can either click the title or I can click edit, and it's going to bring me back to the page editor screen. First thing I want to talk about here is just the layout of this page. What is included here? So you've got this blue panel on the left, and these are the different things that you can add to the report. So first you have class/page. This is how you can copy it across classes. Once you set it for residential, if you use these other classes often, you might want to create the report so it's available to use when you run a land search, a multifamily search, etc. You can add more pages. I'll talk more about that later. Also, if you copy a report that's currently in the MLS that's maybe 3 pages and you want to shave it down to 1, you are able to delete pages as well. Fields. Here's every single field in the system. So there's a lot of fields here. You can add, of course, any of them to the report, and we'll be going over that. Then there's the features. So things like style, association amenities, heating, cooling, garage description, basement description. Those are not fields, they're known as features. So that's a separate category here for you to add that information over. Miscellaneous report elements. This is how you add photos, the action icons, the checkboxes, the date and timestamps, all those basic things that are included on reports. And then grid, default, font, and style. The only thing I really recommend that you kind of switch up here is the snap to grid. All you need to do is uncheck this. That's my recommendation. And the reason for that is the best way to sort of explain this is just by demoing it. So right now, if I go to move this address field, so notice I've selected it, it's orange, that tells me it's selected. As I kind of move my mouse around, notice how it's kind of like a restricted movement here. Snap to grid is supposed to try to help you with alignment. I find it to be kind of frustrating. So I like to uncheck that box. And now notice I have more ability to really very precisely put this field exactly where I want it. And that is something that doesn't necessarily save every time you come back in to edit this report. You would want to make sure to uncheck Snap to Grid if that's your preference. All right, so that's that left blue panel. Then you have your toolbar up here, which is all, how you can change fonts, adding color, all of that stuff. Your command bar is in the top left corner where you can save, so make sure you're saving as you go here. And then the main portion of your screen is really that editor screen where you'll drag fields over, edit pictures, all of that. Any questions so far? All right. So Kathleen's coming with a question. I'm going to keep on talking while she types that question up. So first thing I want to go over is, no worries, Kathleen, is go over adding fields. All right, so Kathleen's question is, how do you access the template again? Okay, how do you access the template again? All right, so let me save this. And I'll go back here. So how I initially started was I went to Preferences, My Views, and what I chose was Copy View. And then under Custom Views, from the drop-down, I chose MLS, which brought me to the list of all the MLS reports. And all I did was click Copy on the one that I wanted. All right, so getting back to our editing screen here. So adding fields. First thing is in the fields panel here, you have a drop-down menu and it currently just says text. When you open that up, you have options of data and also text and data. So what do those three options mean? Text is the field name. So going back to the report that we currently have, the field name for price, for example, is price. So if I bring that over, it's going to display price for the text. Data is whatever the agent types in for the data, so whatever the list price is. Then text and data means you're going to bring over the field name as well as data. And in most cases, that's what I recommend you do. For example, if you only bring over data for the gross tax amount, there's just going to be a dollar value there and no one's going to know what that means, or excuse me, it's only your report. You might not know exactly what that means. So most of the time, bringing text and data over at the same time is most beneficial. For things like address, you don't need to say address and then have it say 123 Happy Street. In that case, you could bring over just the data. So trying to remember that can be challenging. If you bring over the text and forget, as you're looking at the preview, which is this little icon in the top left corner, you'll notice when something doesn't make sense. So just remember, in most cases, text and data is what you're going to want to bring over. So to demonstrate that, I'm going to delete this box here and get rid of this one as well so we have some room. And maybe I want to bring over some of those same fields that I just deleted, like the status. So I'm using that find box. That's definitely the best way to filter this very long list of fields. And we have listing status here. I'm going to switch this to text and data and then drag this over and drop. It gives me two fields. The one on the left is always going to be the status. Somehow my snap to grid got rechecked. Excuse me, the one on the left is always going to be the text, and then the one on the right is always going to be the data. This size of the text field, the field label, whatever you see here is exactly how it's going to display, meaning there's a lot of extra space in this text box. So I'm going to drag it in a little bit. If I change the font, I can go up and change. Tahoma really is the clearest font. I have tried to use Arial because the characters are a little narrower, but I just think Tahoma is really the easiest on the eyes. But again, it's your preference. So if we switched it, maybe I increase the font size. I've done that here and also make it bold. That is now cutting it off. So again, the size here does matter. It's going to say listing stat. So I would want to drag this out so the full phrase is there. Also widen it a bit. And then bring this back up. Now I've changed the font for the label, so I'll probably want to do the same for the data. And the size for this matters as well, which is challenging because you don't necessarily know the data that's typed in. For status, you know what could be in there. For example, it's going to be active. Active under contract is the longest status. So you can play around with this a little bit. You can probably make it a little smaller and it'll be fine. If you make it too small, it will cut off the data. So for example, public remarks. That is always a very large box because there are 1,500 characters that can be typed into that field. And so when we created our reports, we've always had to make those very large to accommodate those agents who truly use all of the characters. So that's something else to keep in mind. Sizing of the fields that you're including here is going to matter because otherwise you'll be cutting off data. All right, so since I've added these fields, and let's drag them up a little bit here, let's just take a look at the changes we've made. So I have my little preview button, and anytime you click this, it does have you save your changes first. So press OK to save your changes. That's great. It kind of eliminates you having to constantly be saving. And it says listing status, CL. This, by the way, is a totally random listing. You can put in any MLS number at the top. So I'm going to put in the same one that I was looking at for the one that I already had. So we can kind of see the changes. All right, so it says A here. So it's using the abbreviated version. I don't want that. So I'm going to go back to my editing screen. Click this and notice it says display abbreviation. So that's why it's only displaying the A. I want description, so it's going to spell out the word active. And we can go back to preview, and now it says active. Alignment is also another sort of tricky thing. If I move this down a little bit and leave it like that, it's not going to be aligned when we look at the preview. So as you're moving, working with a lot of different fields, alignment becomes very important because, especially with the marketing flyers, other people are seeing this, not just you. So you want it to definitely be something that's going to look good. Question from Barbara. Is there a way to autofill from the listing so it's not so cumbersome and time consuming to prepare the flyer? I'm not quite sure what you mean. So this is a one-time thing that you're doing here. You're just, and in this case, I'm using the flyer, but all you're doing here is you've copied a report from the MLS and you're making it your own. Once you save this, it's going to be available for you to use in the system and you won't be having to make these changes each time. It's just going to display exactly how you want it. There is more of like an autofill type thing for fields, and that's what I'm going to go into next, which is called field preference boxes. So doing it this way is challenging. It's having to drag over all of these individual fields, and you can multi-select, so you can hold Control on your keyboard and make multiple selections, change fonts all together here. But still, dragging and dropping each individual field, making sure everything is aligned and the sizing is correct, it's hard. So there's also field preference boxes, and those are located within the miscellaneous report elements section. So specifically it says field preference section. And as you click down and drag, it brings over this box. And I'm going to get rid of these fields that I've put in here. So I've selected all of those, and then we have this little trash icon that deletes them. This is an empty box, which you can just double click to get into. And this screen might look familiar to you because if you've ever customized anything in Paragon, this is the screen that you're taken to. You have the available fields on the left, which are all the fields that you can add. And most of the time you see selected fields, the fields that are already there. But in this case, it was an empty box, so there is nothing selected. So this is a much more automatic option because it's just going to add the fields over and align everything for you. So I can do a bunch at once here. I'm going to bring over MLS number. I just double clicked. I'll bring over property class. And I have the ability to search. So I'll search for my year built. Double click on that. I want style. So you do have your features here. And that, again, makes it even easier. You don't have to worry necessarily about that separate section to drag over the features. We'll bring over color. A few more fields here. All right, let's do the taxes. So we've got taxes, TBD, gross, and tax year. All right, so with that, I'm going to go ahead and hit save. Now I've brought a bunch of fields over all at once. I have the same ability where I can change the font, the sizing. I can make it bold. And when I click bold, it is only going to have the field label be bold and the data will not be, which is how most reports are, so that's good. Sizing does matter here as well. You really never get away from that. So even though it looks like there's space, remember that style is a feature field. And what are the features? Well, those are any time that you can multi-select in listing maintenance. So there could be several selections here. You want to make sure that you're kind of just drag this out a little bit, make it a little bit bigger, just to accommodate multiple lines of data, basically. And now that we've made those changes, I'm actually going to decrease it to 11. I'm going to go to my preview so we can see what that looks like. Notice, by the way, each time I go to my preview, it saves this MLS number. So as you're working in a report and going back and forth to preview, it's going to save whatever listing you inputted. But the next time you come in, you'll have to put in another MLS number. All right, and that's how it looks here. It is showing currently the tax year, so it's giving me all the data that I've entered. So I'm good to go. Very quickly, I can add another field preference box because I've got quite a bit of space over here. Double click in there, and this time I'll add the price. There's two price options, by the way, and I want to point out what these mean. So you have list price, you have closed price, of course, and then price. List price and closed price will show the price based, whatever the status is. So it's listed, it's active under contract, or it's pending. You will get the list price. Once it closes, that's the data you're going to see. Price is dependent on the status. So if it's currently active, it's going to show you the list price. If it's currently closed, it will show you the closed price. So it's kind of like 2 in 1. Currently, what we have on the flyer is just the price field. So based on the status is the price you'll get, and that's what I'm going to add over. Status. We have, let's do rooms. I'm going to search total because I want to add the rooms total, the bedrooms total, the square foot approximate total, and the baths total all at the same time. Then I want to bring over the water fields. Now there's a few things for water that I want because maybe, this listing happens to be a waterfront property and maybe that's my market. Most of the time I'm working in a very water focused area. So I want to add simply the feature field where if it is waterfront, you've selected yes under lot description. So I'm going to search waterfront. Here it says lot description waterfront. Now I could just add the lot description feature, but what that would show me is everything that the agent had selected with regard to the lot description. I only care about waterfront specifically, so I'm not going to add the whole section of lot description. I'm just going to add waterfront. And then along those same lines, I'll add the water body type, access, and name fields. So I've selected all three and click add in the middle. The fields that I've added can be rearranged, so you can drag and drop, or you can select multiple fields and move them up or move them down. Whoops. And you also have the short label option here. I just want to point that out because what it will do is abbreviate the label or the field name. And whatever the code says is what the field label will now be. And that's a good idea to do for status. You don't need it to say listing status. It can just say status. So if I check the short label box, that's exactly what's going to show. No label will take away the field name. So instead of saying status active, it will just say active. Sometimes that works, but it would be strange to do that in a field preference box unless you're going to say no label for everything. And then short value abbreviates the actual data. So in this case, for status, it would say A instead of active. For property class, it would say SNG FM for single family instead of the full phrase. For a lot of data elements, short value doesn't apply because you're not going to abbreviate the price or you're not going to abbreviate the public remarks, for example. So a lot of times this short value doesn't really apply. With that, we can click save. And again, we'll make our same changes. I'll increase this box a little bit, change my font, make it bold. And let's take a look at the preview. So everything's aligned. The system does that for you in terms of the field, using the field preference boxes. So that's really the benefit here. And notice waterfront, yes. So it doesn't say lot description, waterfront, plus all the other things that the agent selected. It just straight up says waterfront, yes. By the way, if this was not waterfront, or I should say, if the agent did not select in listing maintenance that it's waterfront, this would say no. All right, so I've added those fields. We're good to go there. Now, one thing to point out about this, when I check this box here, or select the box, you have view only, and this is unchecked at the top. View only, if you leave it unchecked, it means that you will have the ability to edit later. If you check this box, you will not have the ability to edit later. Now, what do I mean by editing later? Let's go back to the flyer that's already created in the system. I mentioned that you have the ability to edit this. Now, this is the MLS blue flyer. And it says at the top, edit your own text here, so you know you can customize. So we'll go to customize fields. And here's where I would edit my text, but also I have some white boxes down below. I can double click inside this and change these fields if I wanted to for this one particular instance. So with this listing, it is a waterfront property. Maybe I want to remove some of these fields that are on here by default and add in the water fields for this one use. If we have the checkbox of view only, this box would be gray like everything else is, which means you aren't able to edit. So with the one that you're creating, you never know, you might want the ability to edit this at some point when you're marketing a listing. You know, maybe you're not going to market something in the future that's waterfront, so those fields don't apply. This would give you the ability to remove those fields for that particular flyer or that particular listing and showcase something that is more relevant to that property. So leaving this unchecked is a good idea, just so that the ability to edit is available to you. Back up at the top, for the text box that's here, I'm going to actually type in the text that I want. And how you do that is in the text at the top where it says enter your own text, delete that out, and you can put in your own details. It's already as big as it's going to get. And I'll leave this as view only because this is specifically my open house flyer. Great question from Dave. If you later changed a flyer, would that change the default? Essentially, yes. If you customize anything when you're in the reports here, on any of the reports that you have the ability to customize, once you hit save and close, that changes it forever until you decide to change it again. So if I did change these fields here to maybe the school fields, it would always show the school fields until I decided to change it again. However, you always have this restore default option. So while it changes your view of it, you can just always go back to your saved version. So I should say it's not changing your truly saved version if you've created the report yourself, because you always have the ability to go back to that restore defaults. If you wanted to add your own text boxes, by the way, if you were working with a report that didn't already have them, those are included under the miscellaneous report elements. And it's just a text box. Drag, drop. Again, you have to resize so that you have the ability to put in the text that you want, but it's just a matter of dragging that over. I can change the color of this font as well. Think about office branding. If your office has certain colors, this is your opportunity to match those colors. You have these RGB codes, and then you also have like the number code. Every single color has an RGB code and also one of these little pound sign or hashtag codes as well. So if your office does have branding, if there's like a marketing person in your office, they likely have those codes. So you could reach out to them and ask for the RGB color codes, and you could just type in the color and it would give you the exact same color of your office branding, which is pretty cool and an easy way to do it. If you don't have those codes and you just want to kind of find a color, you have to find this little circle guy here, and you can kind of drag him around, drop, and also use this meter on the right to kind of change the color scheme. And then click apply when you're ready. So that changed this to like a blue color. It doesn't really pop with this background of blue. So I can change that as well just by selecting that background. Taking a look at that color here. Maybe I want that to be white. So I'll drag that up to the top left corner and apply. Once you have a box selected, whether it's a text box or one of these other boxes, which by the way, you can bring over by dragging a box over and just making it as big as you want. You can change them, the line, or I should say the border. So you could make it, let's do this. Dotted. So you can see how it kind of makes it different there. You could also say no border. And then if we change the color, same exact process here. Can change the thickness of it as well. So with those changes, let's take a look at our preview again. Aha, so I changed my box background to white, and that kind of screwed up with what I had down below. So we can make those changes next here. I'm going to bring this back to black. So I want to change the color here so we can actually see it. The left one changes the font color, and then the one on the right actually changes your background color. So I'm going to get those codes, 53, 143, 140. I forgot the middle one already. Oops. 143. So 53, 143, 140. There we go. So now those are matching because I was using those codes. I used Arial up here for the font, so I'm going to change that to Arial for the public remarks and this other text box down here. And let's go preview. All right, moving on. Let me just check my notes here. Okay, I do just want to demonstrate the features, by the way. I already talked a little bit about this, but I'm going to drag this over so I have some room here. When you look at the features, if you do want to drag over individual fields instead of using the field preference boxes, you have two options here. If I want to bring over association amenities so that no matter what the agent enters for association amenities, I see all of those options, then I'm going to drag over this blue color. I'm going to choose text and data, drag that over so that association amenities shows as my label, and whatever the agent had selected for amenities will display. If I only want to know if there is a basketball court, then I can bring over that text and data. And it will say yes if the agent selected that it has a basketball court, otherwise it will say no. So same process as the fields. Remember, you have your text and data, especially with the preferences, or excuse me, the features. You will always want to bring over text and data. Otherwise, if you drag over just the basketball court data, it's just going to say yes or no, and you're never going to know what that's referring to. So text and data is definitely important there. All right, let's talk about the photos. So on this report already are 4 photos. How you can bring over additional photos is also under miscellaneous report elements, and it's listing image. When you drag these over, it's a tiny box, and if I leave it at that size, that is the size of the photo that's going to appear. So for these have been made larger just by clicking in the bottom right corner. You can increase or decrease the size. You are limited in the size, and that is helpful so that you do not distort the image, like stretch it out and make it look crazy. So it limits you in terms of, like, I go from this big to that size, and there's nothing in between really. You can kind of play around with the numbers here. I don't recommend it unless you really know what you're doing, because you might end up distorting images. When you bring photos over, you have some options. You have spinner, labels, and display. Spinner, which is checked, this is a really cool feature, and I'm going to go back to the flyer that we've already created so you can see. The spinner is whenever it says one of however many photos you have, and it allows you to just scroll through those photos. So that's great on a regular report so that you don't have to click on the photo and actually scroll through them all here. You can just see everything right on the screen. It's especially cool on the flyers because if I wanted to, even though this was my listing and when I added it, I put in these images as my primary, second, third, and fourth. Maybe I want to market something special, like this is a great image. It's showing the outdoor, the lake view. But maybe I want to kind of keep that going and just show these lovely lake views here. If I go to print this, it's going to print with these pictures set. So when you're doing your own reports, it's definitely a good idea to check the box for spinner so that you have that functionality and the benefit of doing that for the flyers. Label will show the label directly on the photo if you've typed a label in or the agent typed a label in. And this primary option is choosing the display option is choosing the photo that you want to display. I'm going to delete this one here. Whenever you drag a listing image over and select it, primary will be selected. If I choose another one, it still says primary, and another still says primary. And what that's going to give me is a report with 3 photos all being the same. It's going to show the primary. That's not helpful, especially on flyers. So when you drag photos over, oops, didn't want to hit preview, I wanted to hit trash, but that kind of shows us what I mean here. It's showing the same photo. So when you bring photos over, this one I, in fact, do want to be the primary. So I'll leave that, but I'm going to delete this one just so you can see the full effect. Bring that photo over, resize, And it's set to primary, but I'm going to choose first secondary, which really means the second photo. And this one is the second secondary and third secondary. Another type of photo that you can bring over, by the way, is the map. That's also under your miscellaneous report elements. Not that one. Sorry, that's the action icon. Listing map. That's the one we want. So, and you can make that you can size to whatever you want. So you're not restricted. Keep it sort of squarish. That's kind of the best way to go about it. And that doesn't look good at all, but I just want to show you what that is. It's going to show specifically where it's mapped. And that's important if you're using that, especially on flyers, then that's you marketing your own listing. So you're going to want to make sure that when you added the listing, that you mapped it appropriately. Otherwise, it will be showing an incorrect location. All right, just real quick, adding additional pages or selecting classes. So again, once you save this and you're finished, you have select class. So if I also worked with a lot of land listings or multifamily listings, I want to switch this to land, customize it for that, because there's different fields for land, and customize it for multifamily so that when I save this and activate it, I'll have my particular flyer available for all three of those classes. If I wanted this to be a 2-page flyer, I can click the little plus sign here on the right, and it's going to add a second page. So I can click page 2, and this is blank because we're starting from scratch on this page. So when I talked about the beginning, starting from scratch, this is what I meant. You'll get this blank page here. We're kind of like, all right, where do I even begin, right? So that's why it's definitely, hopefully you can see it's definitely easier to start from copying an MLS view. But since we have this blank slate here, I want to talk about a few things that are really good to include on every report. And they're things that are there. If you're copying an MLS report, they're already there. So you might not even think about them. But they're mostly located under miscellaneous report elements. And the first thing is a date and time stamp, so that when you print it, it has the date and the time on it, and also page number. That's helpful for printing as well. And the things that, this is a font that you can customize. You can also change the format of it. So you can make it as tiny as you want so that it isn't taking up too much space. And just kind of have it, the bottom right corner, the left side, whatever you want. Also, a checkbox. You probably never think about the checkbox because it's on every single report by default. But if you're creating one yourself, you want to make sure to have the checkbox, which will allow you to select it and either email it or print it. The action icons are also good. So that is the history, so that you can easily access the history, the map, so you can easily click to view the map. Now, we copied the flyer, so maybe these aren't things that you use for flyers, but if you were really creating your own sort of full view, these are things that you definitely want to include. Open house, so that you can easily see if there's an open house scheduled for that listing, or a broker tour. Showing time. If the agent uses showing time to schedule a showing, you need to have this icon there so that you can click it and actually schedule a showing. Another thing that's important if you're truly creating your own report is the list agent and office. Those are details that are required on reports, based on the National Association of Realtors. Those are things that should be included. So under fields, you can search list agent, list office, and there's a ton of fields because it's all the contact information, email, phone number, fax, name, all that stuff, and plus the co-list options. So you kind of got to scroll through these a little bit. A couple ways that you can search. If you search like list agent and then dash agent name, that helps to filter the list a little bit more. So there's that. And then I think it's listing office name. And that's all you need is just the list agent's name and their office. Again, you can make it as tiny as you want and drag it down to the very bottom of the report and just kind of gotta unselect it. Have it down there at the bottom. Not quite the very bottom, because another thing that you'll want to make sure that you include is the disclaimer. Another box that you want to increase the size of for sure, but you can make the font nice and tiny so you don't have to make it too big, and just have that lining the bottom of the page of your report. With all those things that I've added, let's just go to preview so you can see what page 2 looks like here. So it's got the date. It says page 2 of 2. I'll show you how you can change that. The action icons that I added here, some are not showing because in this case the agent doesn't have showing time, so that is not going to display. And then down at the very bottom we have the list agent's name, office, and the disclaimer, which we got these little dots running. So even though I made the box big enough, my text is not wrapped. So that's another thing that I'm going to change. Go back to my report here. Does it not let me change it? Oh, I thought it did. So sorry, I thought it would let me choose between just showing page 2 or page 2 of 2, but it doesn't. So I'll have to increase the size of that. And then to wrap my text, this icon that looks like 3 lines, it says multi-line if you hover, just click that so it's white. That means it's selected, and now the text will be wrapped. So going back to preview, I made that big enough so that's showing on one line, and my text is now wrapped down here at the bottom. Oh, you can also change alignment, by the way. I didn't mention that, but if you wanted the disclaimer to be centered, for example, you can just switch that to the middle alignment and it'll display as centered text at the bottom, which looks nice. Okay, and then the last thing I want to show is the My Info, which I'm going to go back to page 1 because that's already included. And this is where it says, whoops, dragging the wrong stuff over. So this is where it says your name. You've got your office image here, agent photo. The office image and agent photo, those are under miscellaneous report elements, agent image, office image. And then the My Office and My Info stuff are fields. So again, if you search My Info, there are all of your options. This is a place where perhaps you don't want to include text and data, you just want the data. This is a field preference box instead. So when you're doing that, let's click into that so we can see. This is where it would be great to use that no label option for all of them because it's just going to show your name. You don't need phone number and then the number, an email, and then the email address. Everyone knows what all that means without having the actual label. So you can check no label for that and it's just going to display the data. Question from Ernest, where was the wrap? Yeah, good question. It's just this line that it's right next to the scissors. That's kind of your helpful thing there. It looks like 3 lines, and when you hover over it, it does say multi-line. So that's the text wrap. All right, so I didn't make too many changes to this, but I just want to reinforce that you can change every single thing that's here. If you don't like these background gray colors, change it. And remember, you have those color change up here at the top. If you want to add more photos, maybe you're fine with these being a little smaller so that you can add more, you can do that just by minimizing the size here. That's going to allow me to add maybe 2 more photos to this. Yeah. So truly whatever you want to do here, and again, I'm going to add spinner and switch this to the 4th secondary and 5th secondary. And I'm going to recenter them. All right, so I clicked save because I'm going to leave this now, and I'm going to go back to open. Clicking open brings me back to my list of reports. And if you remember back at the beginning of this, we haven't yet activated this, so it's not going to be available in my list of reports. I'm going to go to open house flyer settings and just check that activate this view box and then hit save. Now, if I go to search, I'm going to run a new one here. I'll put in that same MLS number. Click search. Go to my green reports button, and within the details folder, there's my open house flyer, and I'll select that. Looks like I unchecked the spinner for those 2. That was my mistake, but the rest of these here all have the spinner on them, so I can scroll through the photos. I can go to customize fields. I can't edit this because I checked the view only box, but I do have the ability to edit this if I needed. So I can remove those waterfront fields where it's not applicable and then highlight the school data instead or whatever else I want. And I still have the ability to put in my text down here so that, which is helpful because this is going to change every time. You know, sometimes your open houses are on Saturdays, sometimes they're not. So you want to make sure that you can change this and say, you know, come by for lunch and giveaways or whatever you want to include here. So it shows that information down there. Every time you create a report, it's going to be, instead of this green M, meaning MLS, it's going to be blue A for agent. I recommend if you've created a report, it's probably going to be something that you're going to use often. So it's great to make it a favorite. Your favorites are up here at the top so that you can easily access them from this list. And if you go and click and hold your click, then you can drag and drop it in your favorites. You can put as many favorites as you want, but especially the ones that you're creating, put them up there because you're going to use them. Also, when you make favorites, if you go to, I'm just going to switch to the spreadsheet real quick here. If you go to print plus, the report that you, or the reports that you've put in favorites are at the top of this list as well. So now you don't have to scroll here to find your custom report. And if you go to email, your favorites are at the top of that list as well. So it really helps it in 3 places to organize favorites. Definitely do that for the ones that you've organized or created. Now, just real quick, I want to go over for admins and brokers. It's the same exact process. I just want to make sure that you understand how you start the process to create a report for the office, and then how it's then made available for everyone else. So what you would do as an admin or the broker is you would go to the preference menu and you would choose Office Views. And here's that same exact process again. You have all of the reports here that you've created at the office level. If you haven't created any, this would be blank. And so we would go to either add to start with a blank slate or copy view to create your own view. To copy an MLS view. And I'm just going to choose one real quick here to copy. I'm going to activate it. Especially as admins, creating it for the office, you definitely want this to be your very last step. You don't want to activate it because it will be available for everyone until it's truly finished. All right, so just real quick, because we are at time, sorry about that. Under the details folder now is my office view, and it's purple for office with the O. And so there's nothing you need to do as admins to make it available for everyone. Again, once it's activated, it will be available for everyone in your office to use. So with that, any questions to wrap this up? It's kind of trial and error when creating your own reports. Kind of just if you're interested in it, which I assume you are since you took this webinar, go in and just explore the layout, drag and drop fields, click preview. Anything that you do is not permanent. You can always make changes. And then if it doesn't work out, you just don't use that report, but definitely explore it and you'll be able to create something lovely for either yourself or for the office to use. All right, everyone. Well, thank you so much. I'm going to wrap this up and I will email the quiz again to everyone who's been here for the whole session. If you are licensed in New Hampshire, go ahead and take that quiz. If you don't have it in a half an hour, email me, Brianna@Naren.com. It comes from SurveyMonkey, so it does, if your spam filters are really tight on your email, it might block it. So just shoot me an email, Brianna@Naren.com, and I am happy to email it to you separately to ensure that you have access to that. So thanks again so much, and have an awesome week, everyone.